Okay, so I hope you all had a good holiday season, even though, given the circumstances of this year, none of us probably had the holiday season we were imagining, and as a result, it was probably far from the best holiday season we've ever had, but given the circumstances that this year is arguably the worst year in modern history, hopefully we were all still able to make the best of the holiday season. And as you all are aware, I'm sure, this is the last day of the year, and tomorrow we will be in a new year. And while going over into the new year isn't instantly going to fix everything, hopefully as we go into the new year, we can turn over into a new era and slowly but surely start to fix all the damage that 2020 did to us, both socially and psychologically. Anyways, so today I'm going to be uploading 2 Let's Talk videos, both of which are related to Christmas and holiday topics, and this is going to be the first of the 2, where I'm going to talk about people dressing up as Santa Claus, mall Santas, SantaCon, just people dressing up / cosplaying Santa Claus. And they're everywhere. People dressing up as Santa Claus are everywhere, because, you have mall Santas, when a mall hire somebody to dress up as Santa Claus, and they usually sit on the big throne and by the Christmas tree, and all the little kids line up to either sit on a chair next to Santa or sit on his lap and tell him something that they want for Christmas. And then there's also the big holiday parades. Usually Santa Claus is on one of the floats in those parades. And then you also sometimes have, if say a resort or a country club is having a big holiday party, they might hire someone to come in and dress up as Santa Claus to entertain the little kids briefly and to also possibly hand out presents to them. Yeah, so people dressing up as Santa Claus, it's been a staple of Christmas for many years now, and yeah, it's just something that it's always been around, and it's everywhere. Now, I wanted to talk about my personal experience with people dressing up as Santa Claus. Now, of course, nowadays, as practically an adult, I don't really think much of it. However, when I was a little kid, I sure did think a lot of it. So, when I was a really, really little kid, I was afraid of Santa Claus. I did get over this fear rather quickly, however, it kind of transformed, if you will, into another fear, or a similar fear. I got over my fear of Santa Claus when I was maybe 4 years old, maybe 5 years old, and it changed not from a fear of Santa Claus, but to a fear of people dressing up as Santa Claus. I was afraid of the people who would dress up as him. And the reason for this was because ever since I was a little kid, I always thought of the situation as rationally as possible. I always overthought things, so I always figured, okay, so why is Santa Claus here at the mall closest to my house? What about this mall that's like 15 minutes from my house is so special that Santa Claus would come to this mall versus every other mall in the world? Every other mall in every other part of the world that celebrates Christmas. Out of all those possible malls and parades and public locations and everywhere, why did he choose to come here? So that always confused me, and that is why I always believed that guy, sitting in the red chair, that's not the real Santa Claus. It can't be. There's no way, because, like I said, why would Santa Claus come to this mall of all malls? If he was going to go to every single mall, he could maybe only make like a 5-minute appearance at longest at every single one, and he'd have to work day and night nonstop. And I always figured, Santa Claus is a busy guy, He has to keep track of every single kid in the world that celebrates Christmas, A list of who's naughty and who's nice, and if he has to check that list 2 times, as the song says, I mean, you never really know, but still, keeping track of that must be a nightmare. And he has a whole team of toy-making elves to manage and a fleet of reindeer, and he has a lot to do. And, to figure out, who's getting each gift, and to label all the gifts, and to wrap them all, and Santa is a very, very busy person. I always, saw that as a little kid, and because of that, I thought to myself, so how in the heck would Santa Claus have the time to come all the way down here to the United States and just drop in for a public appearance at a mall? And something my parents always told me was you have to be asleep for Santa to come, and of course, the real reason for that is now quite obvious, but back when I was a little kid, I always thought, okay, so if you have to be asleep for when Santa Claus comes, so if Santa Claus doesn't want you seeing him when he's in your house, then how come he's perfectly fine with you, hanging out with him in public, like at a mall or a parade or something? So for that reason, I always knew that that's not the real Santa Claus, And whether or not my parents, grandparents, whoever was with me at the mall realized that, I'm not sure, because I was always afraid, because the ideas of clearances and background checks, I wasn't aware of that as a little kid, Because as far as I knew, this was just some random guy who was dressed up as Santa Claus in the mall who could do God knows what, Of course, I was a kid, so I didn't know what he would do, but he could have, kidnapped me, molested me, taken me away and done something horrible to me. Of course, I wasn't aware of those bad ideas as a little kid, but I was like, oh, this guy is just some, random guy. He could easily, do something bad to me. That's just what I thought. And whether or not I conveyed that to, because I remember when my grandparents would take me to the mall when I was a kid, they would always pressure me to sit on Santa's lap because they knew I was afraid. And whether or not they thought I was afraid of the actual Santa and they thought that I thought that was the actual Santa, or if they just knew that I was afraid because, I didn't know who that guy was. None of us know who that person is unless you are a worker. Then you might know who it is. But that was always and going off of not just, mall Santas and people dressing up as Santa, that was always the reason why I was afraid of any sort of costumed mascot as a little kid, is because I knew that wasn't the real, that person. For instance, at Disney World, I would see people, in Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy costumes. And I always knew, that's not the real Mickey Mouse, that's not the real Donald Duck, that's not the real Goofy, because they're cartoon characters. They don't exist in real life, so obviously that's not the real them. The real them exists in another plane of reality inside our televisions, So, for that reason, I always knew that this is not the real person. So obviously this is just a poser in a costume. And as a little kid, I never knew, of course, there are instances where, a mall Santa or a mascot wearer might turn out to be a bad person and do something bad, but most of the time that's not the case. They've gone through clearances and background checks, so, the people running the show can make 100% sure that they're trustworthy and are going to do an authentic job of portraying this character, So, oh, and please excuse any background noise. We're having some work done to our house right now, so apologies if there's a lot of background noise. But anyways, so that was where the fear derived from. It was from the fact that I knew this wasn't the real Santa Claus, and I had no idea who the person behind that fake hat and beard was. So that just always freaked me out, because it's like, that's not the real Santa. Why would I want to sit on some random guy's lap and tell him what I want for Christmas? I just didn't see the appeal to it, because I knew that wasn't the real Santa Claus. Because the way you would actually get, your Christmas list to him was you send him a letter in the mail. And that's how you got to the real Santa Claus. My parents even went to as far as to write reply letters from Santa coming to me, So I would, think that, it received him or got to him, and he, received it and then wrote back to me, Anyways, so that is where the fear derived from. And of course, as I got older, that fear started to dissipate. And I did actually have a job at a hardware store a few years ago that one of the employees around Christmas time would actually dress up as Santa to entertain the little kids. And that was the first time I genuinely felt comfortable being around a fake Santa. Of course, that was the first time I'd been around a fake Santa, period, in years, but it was kind of like me viewing this childhood fear that I had finally conquered. It was like vindication, being able to be around this fake Santa and, enjoying it, because I knew who was in that suit. It was just one of my fellow coworkers, and I knew he would never do anything bad to me because I had worked with him for months at that point, so it was perfectly okay. But yeah, so that's And before I close out this video, I'm just going to tell you guys a few quick stories of when I was a little kid, me having to, you know, encounter fake Santas and mall Santas. So, like I said earlier, my grandparents, they would take me to the mall, and they would always want me to, you know, go see the mall Santa, because my cousins were huge. They would always want to go see the mall Santa. They would always want to do it, and I think that's because they didn't think as in-depth and analytically as I did about the whole situation, about how, you know, how, oh, Santa's too busy, there's no way he could come to this mall specifically, and how, you know, that's not the real Santa. You know, the real Santa's way too busy to come down here, and why would I just want to sit on some rando's lap so I can tell him what I want for Christmas? It's not like he's going to be able to do anything about it unless he gets my address and freaking, you know, drops off a package Christmas morning. So anyways, so I remember this one time, so the way the mall was set up, there was a big open area where the Santa was sitting, and then I was on the upper level. There was a ring of platform on the upper floor of the mall where I was standing looking down. And we were walking by, I was with my grandma and grandpa, and we were walking by, and I glanced down at the Santa, and the Santa sees me, and he waves at me, and I immediately hide behind my grandpa's legs. And my grandpa's like, oh, you're scared of the Santa? And I was like, yeah. And then my grandma gets the genius idea, says, hey, well, why don't you go give him a piece of candy? And I was like, what? So we went into this Lindor chocolate store. You know, the Lindor chocolate candy is pretty gourmet candy. It's always my grandma's favorite candy. We went in there and bought, you know, a little bag of those chocolate balls that they make. And, you know, they make them in all different kinds of flavors. We probably just got the basic milk chocolate ones. But anyways, so we bought a bunch of those Lindor chocolates, and my grandma takes one out of the bag and hands it to me and says, why don't you go give that to Santa? And I was like, are you kidding me? There's no way I'm doing that. And she says, go give it to Santa. And, you know, we go back and forth for a while, and eventually they lead me down to the first floor and back over to where the mall Santa is. And I don't remember, there wasn't really a line. I remember it was pretty empty at that point. So my grandparents, you know, they were like, oh, there's no kids waiting in line to see him. You know, this is a perfect opportunity. Just walk up there and hand him the candy. And I was like, okay, fine. And I very, very vaguely remember this. I was maybe 6 years old at the time. It's a very vague memory, but I do remember, you know, with the candy in hand, I very apprehensively walked up to the Santa, you know, like a guy in high school, very nervous to ask out his crush to the dance or something like that. You know, I walk up, and, you know, he's looking at me with a jolly face or whatever, you know. The beard is hiding most of his face, so I can't make out his exact expression. Hand him the candy, and I run off. And, you know, he takes the candy, and whether or not he says thank you or not, I couldn't hear because I was probably too scared to, you know, hear any of the words he was saying. And my grandparents were like, ha ha ha, good job. And I was like, thanks, can we get out of here now? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then we, you know, headed out. And one more quick story. So this was probably around the same time. If I remember right, I was only with my mall. I was only at the mall with my grandpa this time. It was just me and him. And this was also around Christmas time. Whether or not it was the same year, I don't know. It might have been a different year. So I remember what happened was, so me and my grandpa were hanging out around the mall Santa. My grandpa was trying to pressure me into going to see the mall Santa. Because he wanted me to actually sit on his lap and have me read off my list to him, which I did not want to do. So eventually he relents and he's like, okay, let's go. So we're going off somewhere, and at one point we needed to take a bathroom break. So I remember, you know, I went into the bathroom, I did my business. I'm pretty sure my grandpa was in there too, because, you know, either he wanted to keep an eye on me or he had to go too. And I was at the little sink, and, you know, I finished washing my hands, and I go to either the paper towel dispenser or the air dryer, and I glance to my right, and standing right next to me is the mall Santa, probably on his break, using the bathroom or whatever. And I remember I let out the most piercing scream, because, first of all, if it was just any random person standing right there, it would have startled me anyways. But the fact that it was the mall Santa, that just scared me even more. So yeah, I scream, and my grandpa starts laughing hysterically, and the Santa just smiles at me and walks out of the bathroom. So yeah, that was a thing that happened. Yeah, oh boy. Well, anyways, that's just about all I got on mall Santas and people dressing up as Santa, so I hope you all guys all enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for later this evening when I'll be uploading another Let's Talk video that's holiday related.